Okie dokie. Hitting the stream button. Gonna pop out my chat. Pop out. Alright, move this to the side. Audio? I always have to check because for some reason it always has to be a problem. Okay, cool. So I keep trying to share. I can't even see. I can't even see. Gotta move this over a little bit. What was I thinking? Yeah. Can't answer questions. There we go. Get my glasses on. So I'm trying to share more and more of my Mondays with you guys, even if it's in a state of unpreparedness. I have been working on a kit for the Delta 400 watt 19 volt power supply for quite some time and perfecting my 3D design. And the design is working now, but only so far as I can print it and it looks good and I can plug things into it. But getting it on, I actually don't know what's going to happen. I'm probably going to end up breaking it as I try it. So I'll probably save that little bit for last. But as you can see, there's going to be several different versions of these which you can download and print yourself. This one is going to use a noise blocker fan on top, and I have a cable I'm going to solder on to the fan header inside the power supply. That way I can easily plug the fan in and take it out for cleaning if I need to. The other versions I could stick on probably two 30 millimeter fans on the end, but that would be noisy, and like the whole point of this anyway is to get better cooling and have it be silent. And this fan works really well for this power supply. I've already been testing that. As far as the cables go, I'm going to be releasing a video tutorial on how to make these, but they've turned out quite nice. They're using the G16 connectors, which you can find on my website or elsewhere on the internet, and some MDPC sleeving over a standard AC cable. And they look really beautiful, and they're not really that hard to put together. There are some pitfalls in doing it, which is why I think it merits a video. I did these ones in white because I have a customer that wants them done in white, so there you have it. But yeah, they turned out really neat and clean, and I think that they're pretty. I could see me making them for my normal computer case too, so maybe it's something that you guys will be interested in for your own rigs. So saying hi to everybody. I don't know how many people we have. I can't see that, but I see the people in chat. So hello, Thomas, Cirrus, Carson, Tyler, Busy242, and Pedro. See, I can say hi to everybody when it's just like 5 people, or maybe 6 people. I can't count. So anyway, I'm going to get to work doing this, and we'll just kind of chill out and answer questions as we go along. But in the meantime, I guess you guys can be chatting about that Verge video that came out on assembling a PC, because that seems to be the topic of discussion on the internet. And I feel real bad for the guy that did the video, because I thought it was a solid video. Didn't do everything the way I would have done it, but I think he covered the basics for a complete beginner. But boy, did he get thrashed. Ugh, some people were really ugly about it too. But that's neither here nor there. I just wanted to bring up something for people to talk about. And sorry, that one guy, I forgot about you. So first things first for my power supply. Where was I? Oh yeah. So I have this adapter. It's a Molex 2-pin to 4-pin CPU adapter. Well, it's just standard 12 volt plus and 12 volt minus, or voltage positive and voltage minus, I should say, which is going to plug in like this. So I need to wire this to one of the 2 fan headers on the Delta 400. And there's no speed control or anything like that. So it's important to get a fan that you can use resistors with, or that already has a really nice audio profile at max RPM, which this noise blocker PCP 80 millimeter by, I think it's a 15 millimeter fan, it sounds great at max RPM. Or does it sound at max RPM? Tyler, I really appreciate you starting things off with a donation. It's been a while, so you get to have that honor. No, I'm just kidding, man. It's all my honor, so thank you very much for supporting these live streams. I bought a much fancier video input device, so I'm going to be paying that off for quite a while, but it makes things pretty easy. Yeah, Yetzit, how do I say your name? Yetzti? He kind of did screw up on the radiator, but then again, like, I know how hard it is to make videos, and sometimes, like, you're talking and you know the next step and you grab the thing and then you're trying to say the step and show it and you'd be like, oh man, I didn't have that in there. So that kind of was, you know, it was a mistake, but still he was talking about next you're going to install the radiator. You know, he wasn't really saying, how do you install the radiator? I guess that's how I looked at it. Like, again, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't a perfect video. I would have covered some other topics, like make sure you build your system outside of your case first. That's just so helpful. And I think he could have clarified that you shouldn't use extra thermal paste with the stock thermal paste, but remove one or the other. But that's really my only main nitpicks. As far as video capture card, I am in with Magewell. I was an early adopter with a company that I worked with, so I use Magewell products, and I'm using their 4K HDMI Capture Plus dongle. I have a bunch of their PCIe cards around from that defunct business, but you have to have an extra computer. So now I can just plug that right into the side of any computer I'm using and run it with OBS, and they work amazing. They're kind of pricey, I guess, but they work really, really, really well. Okie dokie. Right, so I'm gonna chop this off, snip snip. My puppy, my French Bulldog, is gonna have the same treatment on Thursday. So I feel bad for him. I've been thinking about that every time I cut some cables. But he needs it done. He's getting to be pretty aggressive around other dogs that don't want to play as hard as him. Q Ultimus says, after the video on his account, he specified they fix a lot of the problems after the video. And yeah, I believe that. You're going to fix a lot of problems in editing for sure, once you kind of see how things went together. Like I said, it's really hard to make a video. I hate doing it, because every time I make something, I just know that people are going to like flood and correct me how I did it. And I know that I could have done it better, like if I was watching the video and critiquing myself, but actually making the video and trying to do things on camera and record myself, it's pretty tough. So I guess I give them a little bit more slack. I don't have a lot of patience for people that clearly have no idea what they're doing, you know, and then are telling other people how to do something, especially if it's dangerous, like this. But if you're getting most of the way there, I guess I cut people some slack. Now I wish I had some black wire this gauge, but I don't. This I'm going to be guessing is 24 AWG. It's probably printed on this cable, but the print is so fine. Doesn't really matter. It just needs to be thin enough so I can route it through this power supply, because the fan headers are in the front and my fan component is going to be in the center. Using my automatic wire strippers, which every modder needs a pair of, especially because they are so inexpensive. They used to be expensive when you can only buy them from like Molex or Nipex. They're like over $100, but you can buy these Irwin ones from Home Depot for like $14. So definitely needs to be in everybody's toolbox. Just Chris47 says, hey brother, love your style videos. I have a question on the small form factor power supplies that you use in your builds. I want to do a Ryzen APU build for my son and later put on a GPU in it. What would you recommend using as far as wattage? It totally depends on the GPU that you want to use. You probably just want to go right ahead and buy the HTPlex 400. I'm hoping it'll be called the revision 1.5, and Larry will spell that out on his website. But if you order next week, you'll be getting the new version of it. So the HTPlex 400 is future-proof for your application. And then as far as a power brick, it just depends on your GPU. So I think that if you buy the Dell LA330 PM160 from the Dell website, you're going to be fine pretty much with any GPU that you choose. So I hope that helps out. YetsT says, I think it's best to own up to your mistakes, a learning experience for everyone after all. Yeah, I totally agree. And I make so many mistakes all the time. And I try to clarify over and over again, I am not an expert of anything. And I do never claim I'm an expert of anything. Anything I share is just my experience because I think it's fun, right? And I think that the more people see it's okay to make mistakes in public, the more people will be posting their own experiences. And so that's one of the reasons I made that video on delidding. Like sometimes you get a bad CPU and there's nothing that you can do to fix it. That's done. It's just never going to be as good performing as it once was. That's really unpopular because most people are going to do that. If they get that result, they're going to be afraid to post that somewhere on the forums because everyone's going to just trash them and say that you did it wrong. So that's one of the reasons I like to share my experiences and not talk about what is the science or the facts behind it. So plus, I just like to have fun. So if I can have fun with you guys, that's twice the fun. Mike, I'm not going to try, buddy. It's too far away for me to see it totally. But he asks, do you ever sell B-stock cases and parts? And I don't. The reason is I feel like quality is really important to me. So if my computer case is not up to that A-level quality, I'm just not going to sell it. I'm going to retire it somehow. Usually I try to fix it by hand, which can be done. It just takes a lot of time and it's rather expensive. So that's why I don't. Now, I have bent on that rule a little bit, like with my bezels, just because I couldn't get any more of those made if I tried for my bent aluminum wraparound bezels. So some people were going to paint them anyway. That's one of the reasons I bent on that rule. But I typically don't. Potanox says, hey man, just wondering if you've done anything more with your rad water cooling setup. Now, I'm assuming you mean the giant one in my shop and or in my garage rather, that goes through the wall. And yeah, it's my main test bench cooling system. So I use that whenever I'm trying out new hardware. I really, really like it. And I'll say thank you, Watercool, for sponsoring that project. They're never going to watch this and you're probably never going to buy one. But I'm really thankful that they gave me that radiator because that was really expensive. But yeah, I use it all the time. If that's the one you're talking about, because I've done a lot of water cooling builds since then. Adam gives me a good compliment. Thank you, Adam. And Renair says, so how is your stance on pre-selected pre-bin CPUs like DeBauer and overclocking websites offer? Well, there's one company that I use quite a bit for pre-binned CPUs, Silicon Lottery. And generally, they put out a good product. It's not super important for me, to be honest. The best way that I do it is I actually go to like Hardform. And then I'm buying stuff from professional overclockers or extreme enthusiast overclockers who have already been through it, have gotten records on it, and then are selling those chips. If I want something really special for a build, because you can get a great price and you're supporting people that are really pushing the industry forward. So that's kind of how I typically do it. But it's fine to use a company that specializes in it. There's nothing wrong with that. But Travis Jank, he's a world record holder and a friend of mine from PDX land. So if I need something special, I usually just call him up. Or rather, I send him a message. I don't have his phone number. We're not that good friends. Sean asks, any chance you'll look at other small form factor cases? The Sliger DSE Breathe caught my eye. proud S4M owner, by the way. Sean, I don't mind at all looking at other small form factor computer cases. If people want to send them to me, as some people have, I look at them and I talk about what I like about them. So I don't think people need to feel like because I sell a computer case, I'm biased. I am biased towards quality, but the Mini doesn't pay my bills. This kind of stuff does. The Mini is there as a pet project because I felt like people weren't selling what I wanted to see in the market. So if you have a computer case, even if you think you're a competitor to me, I don't consider you a competitor if you make a computer case. So if you're ripping off my design and selling my design, that's different. I probably won't give you a fair review. But anything else, I would love to look at. Nora Rivera states, I have the new revised Zotac 1080 Ti Mini, which has the offset capacitor. Is this why you couldn't use the water block available for it? It depends what water block that you mean that was available for it. I got the one from Barrow, and I have that one on there now. It required a lot of assembling. And I know that Zotac had one, but it was impossible to buy at the time. So I don't know if you can buy that separate now. And then I think that there is another major manufacturer in the that sells a block for it. I can't remember who does it. So if you want to say it in chat, that'd be helpful. Okay, so I really am going to do a little bit more work before I talk anymore. So I have this peeled and this peeled. I'm going to stick in some heat shrink. I'll do that next. Usually I would do this in series rather than doing kind of a butt connection to make it look nice, but it's going to be inside of a power supply, so really nobody's ever going to see it. And the wire is so small gauge that I can fold it right against itself and it's going to be fine. But if you're actually wiring or sleeving a power supply, this is not the way that you would do it. I'm going to turn on my Weller WE-S51, which I love. This was a great purchase. Another purchase I highly recommend. Weller WE-S51. And there are technically better choices out there, but I found a good deal on this one, and I really like it. That with my quad hands, which I'm also not sponsored by, but this piece of technology is incredible. It's a helping hand station, but it is built like a truck. It is scientific and industrial grade. It was like $40. And before then, you had to spend like $300 before this thing came out to get something this high quality. Everything's metal in it. It's super weighted. I love it. I modified mine by putting this flexible fan post so I can extract the fumes. That is a quad hands. You can buy them on Amazon. Super highly recommend it. So I'm going to use it now. I used the my neighbor's gas-powered weed whacker. I'm so out of shape. I did my lawn, and down the street I have a corner lot, and I did my property next door. And I was only doing it for like 40 minutes, but I haven't done that in a while, so now it's like I can't lift my arms this high without shaking. It's really embarrassing how out of shape I am. Lots of things blown up in chat. I can't read everything, but it's good to see the new faces in here. Good. I timed it just right to where I missed any questions. Okay. So I have no idea which one's positive and which one is negative, so to speak. That's not the proper language for this. I think the safest thing to do, I'm going to plug this into the wall, and then I'm going to use my multimeter, and I'm going to figure out what's what. This is the tricky part, though. Getting my crow's feet on my connections. Basically what I'm doing now is I'm tightening down the clamps, the screws on the crow's feet, which I have wired to my GX16 connector, which is the inlet port for the custom cable I have sleeved right here. If you're just coming in, I finished making these. They turned out really good, and I'm going to make a video on how to do it yourself because this is really cool looking. If you can imagine this in the back of your Mini instead of a standard AC cable, it's a great way to personalize them, and it's not super difficult. You do need to be able to solder, you do need to be able to do some heat shrink stuff, but it's not super difficult. Now, first things first, I haven't tested this one yet, so I'll be all like, it's not super difficult, and then I'll plug it in and it will just melt and electrocute me. This is MDPC sleeving, and it is sleeved on a white cable, so man, it really pops for sure. Okay, I believe this one is my ground. Again, the weed eater strikes again. Cool. I am reading 120.8, which is exactly what I want to read. And if I put it right here, what do I get? Probably nothing. Because I don't want anything right there. And if I reverse it, I should get minus 120. Well, I shouldn't get minus 120 for AC. That's stupid. Okay. Now let's see if I have these crow's feet plugged in all the way. I hope that I do. If all the lights in the house turn off, you know what happened. Okay. This top one, can barely see it. This should be ground 120. So if we go over to this side, I want to see DC power. And if I click right here, I want to see which is the voltage plus and the voltage minus. And now that we know, I can wire this up. Doesn't smell like burnt plastic. I've heard people say that barrel fittings are really good in terms of quality. In what order would you rank EK, bits power, and Barrow? You know, I've not seen Barrow's fittings. I've heard that too. People say that I like their fittings, but in my opinion, I only buy Coolant's fittings. I don't understand the obsession with bits power fittings. People love them, but I don't think they're as high quality as EK or Coolant's. I just gotta say it like it is. They have some great products out there. Their blocks I've used have all been fantastic, but I think EK and Coolant's make the best fittings. And Coolant's definitely makes the best fittings overall because they make the most amount of them and they make some really cool specialty ones. So typically I buy EK blocks, Coolant's fittings, Reservoir, it depends. I really, really like water-cooled products. For that, their Reservoir is the best one I've ever used. And then for radiators, definitely water-cool. But, you know, it's one of those things where you become a fanboy and you just kind of buy the same stuff over and over again. So I'm not saying any of those vendors are bad. That's just what I do. That's me. Coolant's products only thread with their fittings. I don't really know what that means exactly because it's standard G-quarter, you know, BSP fittings. So they work on EK radiators and Coolant's radiators and water-cooled radiators. So, have you looked at Singular Computers hardware? Yeah, man, that guy is a nuts. Okie dokie, so back to work. Nori asked, what's for dinner? And leftovers, I believe, which is some Vietnamese food. Leftover Vietnamese food. I'm blinded by the light. Why did the GTX 1030 come up? Out of curiosity. But really what I'm interested in is why the GTX GT 1030, I suppose. Is it because of the low profile, the half height card, or I just really feel like the 1050 Ti is where it's at as far as low power budget cards. Okay, so now I gotta move over my quad hands. I'm gonna solder this directly because I don't have this kind of, what would you call that thing? Pin header? No, that's not really right. I don't have the doohickey. So I'm going to solder it directly. And I gotta get some footage because this has to go on my making of video. Smile, guys, you are now on camera. Eric Pearson says, who wants to use a bunch of different makers for water cooling parts? Seems counterintuitive, just saying. That's totally fair. I mean, having the same logo all throughout your system is kind of a cool thing. For me, it really comes down to necessity, though. Like, EK just does not have the entire fitting selection as Coolants does. So sometimes when I need a specific fitting, I have to go to Coolants. Watercool just carries other people's fittings. So you're going to be mix matching at any point anyway. So again, that's kind of why I buy from different makers. I would rather buy from one because these companies are all either foreign or their shipping is really expensive anyway. So I'd like to combine it all, but it's just kind of how it works out. Did I unplug this? What happened here? That's weird. What watch am I wearing? It's just a cheap Invicta. It looks like a Rolex Submariner, but it's just a $40 Invicta. It works. Some graphics card speculation going on in chat. I'm really shaken from that weed eater. Alright, there's one done. And what I'm going to do here, kind of a trick. Instead of wiring up the wires to one fan header, because it's just a standard DC output header, it's not a sensing header, I'm just going to space it out. That way, and use two headers for one fan. That way they have a less chance of bumping in together. So for this one, I'm going to use some heat shrink as an extra safety precaution. I don't really know exactly what you mean, Trasher Hater, so I guess I have to look that up a little bit later. Sorry. Oh, I bumped it. Okay, I'll get a question here. When is the HDPlex 400 AC adapter coming in stock? All I get regarding that is soon. Soon. But it can't be too soon for you guys because I haven't gotten mine yet and I'm helping beta test it. So it's not in beta yet. And when I get that, that's going to be probably the most exciting piece of computer hardware that I'll get to use this year. So turn on my evacuation station. Okay, I have my fan wires soldered. I'll move this down like so. Okay, so this is the ground, which is the top. I'm gonna loosen this up and prepared myself for the install. T. Kuro says, I've never soldered anything before. What do you use for ventilation? I solder out in my garage with the garage door open. It's definitely not safe to do it like I'm doing now. I mean, if I wasn't doing more than what I just did, I wouldn't do it. You can definitely lose brain cells by doing this. So just solder outside or next to an open window and you will be fine. But not in a closed room. So people are asking about 400-watt adapters on Chinese websites. I have bought a lot of power supplies. It's my hobby. I buy power supplies like you would not believe. I have buckets of different power supplies from people across the web. And rather than write mean things about 90% of them, I just cover the ones I really like. But that's my hobby. So I really only cover or talk about the same 4 power supplies, which makes me think, which I can assume people think I only use those 4 power supplies, but that's definitely not the case. Best name ever asked, get a fume extractor with some activated carbon. I would love one, but putting one in my office, I don't have the space for it. And I'd have to cut stuff into my ceiling. So I just go out in the garage where I have my soldering station set up. But I have this here right now just so I could hang out with you guys. Tom Brown asks, can I have some of your extra Pico power supplies? You don't want my Pico power supplies. Sorry for bumping the mic. My extra Pico power supplies are extra because they have melted or popped. Thanks to Furmark or OCCT. And the ones that pass, those are the ones that end up on my channel. Pat Smith asks an extremely good question. What's unique about this Delta power supply? And what's unique about it is cheap, relatively speaking. It's $120 if you buy it off Mauser or DigiKey. Sometimes you can buy it for 120 bucks on Amazon, but they like to really gouge you on Amazon. So for 120 bucks, you get something that's pretty compact, that works fairly well, but you have to wire it up yourself. So it's kind of a pain in the butt in that regard. But you don't really have a lot of options in this bracket, right? So we are all waiting for the HT Plex 400 watt power supply, which I'm really excited about it. Like, it's going to be, if it turns out the way that I'm hoping it's going to turn out, it's going to be my favorite product of 2018. But I have, I think, more reined in expectations of what I'm seeing. Like, it's not going to replace something like this, because this is big and has active cooling on it. So I don't really know how far we're going to be able to push the HT Plex 400. For me, my goal, when Larry was talking with me, he's like, what do you want? And I said, I want a power supply that can handle a 65 watt CPU and a GTX 1060 all day long inside a case with that kind of heat. That's my goal. I think it's a really realistic goal. So that's kind of where I think that power supply is going to be. Now, at the same time, we want to be able to push it further. So that's why there is an adapter plate for putting a small fan on it. And I've seen some really impressive results from it. So if we use it as an external brick, we might be able to push it a lot further and make it pretty cool. Tom Brown says, $120 is cheap? Right, I must have missed something. And yeah, it's not cheap at all. It's expensive, but it's cheap for what it does. I mean, the Dell, for example, the Dell 330 brick, that's $160 new. So that's a comparison that I'd ask you to consider. So I have some suggestions saying that I should make a video how to do this, so you guys can do it. I am, and just as luck will have it, either Linus will do the exact same thing and beat me a day before, or the HT Plex 400 will come out and it will be awesome and this will be obsolete. But I am making the video and I'm taking some clips as I go along. So, all right, let's make a little bit more progress on this. I was looking at, okay, that's ground. Pop all these. I have to bend this a little bit more. So this is my earth, red and white. So I'm gonna guess this is, I'm just guessing here. It worked the first time I guessed, so. One. Ugh. Definitely should have made these wires longer. I'll have to specify that or include longer wires in the kit. Come on, baby. Okay. Now they're fully installed. Trasher Hater says, Josh, hello, what are you thinking about RTX? And I'm not worried about it. I will worry about it when I get my hands on one, you know? That's probably not a fun answer, but I'm not, for me, there's not a lot of point in talking about it until I get my hands on one, so. Power supplies are what turn me on, pun intended. Okay. Tom Brown says, there is a cost to the ITX form factor, and there absolutely is. And I don't really know. There are reasons for it, I understand. It's not super popular yet, so less of something means that companies aren't going to invest in mass producing stuff for it. You can only make computer cases that are as extreme niche for small form factor anyway, because there's only certain combinations of hardware that you can put in, so you're going to sell less, period. But also, I think it attracts a different type of enthusiast. Like, my customers all want extremely high-end stuff, and they really appreciate the art of small form factor. They appreciate high-end computer cases and power supplies, just as much as they appreciate the fact that they have a really fast graphics card. I don't want to, and I think I'm not talking above my pay grade here just because so many of my customers share their intents with me when they email me. I feel like this is true. There's only a few people who are like, I want small and I also want dirt cheap. So thoughts on water-cooled power supplies? Well, there's only ever been one true water-cooled power supply that I have seen. And that was by Coolants. And it was way back in the day, like 2009. They made 1,000 watt, maybe it was more than 1,000 watt. But it was a massive power supply, and it actually was liquid cooled. It had liquid coolant that was the nuclear reactor water runoff stuff that's super, super pure, and they filled the entire power supply with it. And then it cycled through an exchange plate. It wasn't a radiator, but it was like a special module with fins and pipes that would circle through. And then how you cooled it was you sent liquid from your outside loop into that exchange plate, so it would touch the hot plate and then cool that off. But that's how it was cooled. And it was a super cool piece of tech. I mean, really, really neat. And they had it like platinum plated, so it looked like it was chrome. I mean, it was really, really cool. It was expensive. It was very, very expensive. But the other power supply, who made the one that just came out recently? I can't think of who it is. It's probably best I don't name them anyway. But that did not count. For so many reasons, that did not count. That wasn't even close to being a liquid-cooled power supply. And I was embarrassed for that company. I'm usually not hard on other people's products, but that's really sorry, I keep hitting the mic. That's really pushing the the whole water-cooled tagline. FSP wasn't the company I'm thinking about. So if you want to link the FSP power supply, maybe they make the power supply and then this other company rebrands it. But I'm going to look that up right now because I'm interested in what that is. Do you know the model number? Aha, the Hydro PTM. Yeah, okay, so FSP makes the power supply that I was thinking of. Another company is also rebranded that I got to see. So yeah, that doesn't... Oops, I closed the chat down. We need that. That does not count. Where do we all go? it's maybe best case scenario liquid assisted, but I didn't turn the. I'm so sorry. I didn't turn the monitor back at me. Daniel Turner says, you make some sick cases. Thanks, man. And it makes you want to try it yourself. And you know what? That is awesome. That's great to hear. That's why I make these videos, is so I can hopefully make people say, if this idiot can do it, why can't I do it better? That's you guys. So go do it better. Okay, so I was doing what now? Got this plugged in. Let's check this one more time because I get talking and then I don't want to get burning the house down. Because I make mistakes like crazy, like normal, but when I'm in front of the camera, live, I heard a click. I don't know if that was a good click or a bad click. That was a good click. That's the exact kind of click that we wanted. Okay, so I need to get a t-shirt that says okay so, because that's all I ever say, I feel like. Now we're going to plug this in and we're going to see if I guessed correctly. Which I didn't. I got my wires backwards. That or I am tripping them out. No, I'm not tripping them. Let's see what I did wrong here. Oh! Tripped the power supply. Oops! Be much, much smarter. Probably do it here. See, this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. I have this 4 quad hand thingies here ready to help me out, and I'm trying to... Seriously, guys. Bink. Bink. That's really disappointing. I don't know what I was thinking, but I was assuming they were going to... I don't know why I was thinking this. I was assuming they were going to be 12 volts, but they're not. They're 19. And you're going to sit there going, well, why would they be 12 volts? I don't know, because most of PC fans are 12 volts, but they do make 19 volt fans for this application. So what I need to do is I need to get a resistor and push it down to 12 volts. And I don't know how I'm going to do that. I just assumed it's voltage. I did. It's 2018, and here I am not asking beforehand. Where do I have all my resistors? You know what I could try? I could try one of these Noctua resistors. It will drop it maybe not far enough, but let's see what happens. I'm just curious, how much did this drop it? Black and yellow, kill a fellow. That actually applies in the PC world, wow. That's weird. Why would that do absolutely nothing? I don't have an answer for that. That doesn't make sense to me. I don't know what this is. I just know that it's an inline noise reducer for Noctua fans, but maybe it helps send a signal that slows the fan down too. It does have all the colors on it, but I actually can do absolutely nothing about this fan situation until I buy some resistors that are appropriate, which is a bummer. But we do have this working, so in theory it's working fine. So we're about at the time limit anyway. Unplug this before I kill myself. So the idea behind this is going to be the hard one, but I have these crow's feet hooked up to this G16 connector, and I have to finagle it in there and somehow tighten them up. I don't know how I'm going to do it, to be honest. It was better in the computer. Everything's always better in a 3D model than it is in real life. But once it gets done, it will look something like this. It will be a little bit slimmer than this. And the fan's going to go on top. You might be saying, well, why don't you put it underneath? Well, it doesn't. I figured it's better to have it slimmer rather than not. I could put it underneath if I raised it up this much, and it would be this chunky if that's what I wanted, but I don't want that. And then with these G16 connectors, again, I have these custom-made power cables that I'm going to be releasing a tutorial on because they turned out really, really cool. And I think that every modder would want to make a set of these for their PC. So, yeah. All right, let's just handle some questions. I'm going to turn this off because our hour is technically up. I would brainstorm with Dylan because he wants to get a 1060, but he can't afford one, so he has to get an older card. And the problem is the 10 series is just so good on so many different levels, it's hard to go back. And last time I looked too, like the Fury cards, they were still really expensive. For some reason, there's some niche out there that uses them. Oh, Bjorn asks a really good question. He says, what about a flex power supply? This one doesn't look much smaller. No, this is the same exact size as a flex power supply. The difference is a flex power supply has all the cables pouring out of it. So your ATX cable, your CPU cable, your PCIe cable, your SATA cables, your 4-pin Molex connectors. It's really, really messy. So this is a DC power supply, or of course the flex one will be too, but this is going to go into a DC-DC distributor board, a 19-volt distributor board, with just one cable. So it's more suitable to be a power brick than a flex power supply would. This is going to go outside the computer case. So that's the reason that I'm doing this. Trasher Hair says, Josh, so all the same, what card is better for your case body? Can you give me the options one more time? Which case is card is better? I have a list of my favorite cards on my website. It's nfc-systems.com/BOMS. A used R9 380X. I don't know. I don't know what size that is. The last card of that sort of kind of And what's my other option? I kind of lost what Tom Brown was talking about. Someone saying it was cock. Well, if I haven't looked and seen what 380Xs would fit in the Skyreach, but I would, for $100, that sounds like a pretty legit deal. Though, I still probably would buy a 1050 Ti if I could get one used. I know it's not 1060, but well, if anyone have any specific questions for modding or a topic they want to talk about that I'm actually can contribute to. Otherwise, it's going to be game over for today. Oh, we're talking about like that white stuff that you find in power supplies, that insulation material. Man, some power supplies are chock full of it. It's both it's basically insulated material that you can use to transfer some heat away, and also it can stop some coils from winding because it pushes up against them, so it kind of isolates that. So that's I guess is its main use, is making things quieter. But I have one in my awesome all like outdoor power supplies or waterproof power supplies have them. Just it's filled to the brim with it. Though these days the higher end stuff uses like this gray stuff, and it's almost foamy like. Jonathan Dose asks a question. He says the HD Plex, if you leave it in for a few months and you come back, you turn it on, it won't work until you unplug it all. Yeah, that's actually a normal thing. That's being fixed in the new revision though. So yay, but it's not that big of a deal. Pretty much all of them do that, going back forever. That's a good question. Is it possible to power LED strips by a SATA port? Yeah, absolutely. You got to make sure that you're okay with supplying 5 volt to a 12 volt, LED strip, because that's usually what they are. But you can buy them in all sorts of different voltages. You just have to be happy with them being super, super, super dim. And you might also get a flicker with a SATA 5 volt header. Pedro asks, what's the difference between the deluxe and the standard one, and will the deluxe ever go in stock? I assume you're talking about my Skywire cables, and really it's the look and the stiffness of the cable. The Skywire Deluxe are posable, which is a term I've coined. Like you bend them and then they're bent like that. They're still AWG, they're strand wire, but they're posable. And they have this gloss, very thin heat shield. They're really handsome wires, but I can't get a hold of them right now. So right now, you really just have to buy the standard ones. The standard ones are just like standard power supply cable wire. That's really all it is. But they are, of course, the perfect length for the Mini. So functionally, they're identical, 100%. And in fact, the standard ones are probably even easier to install, if I'm being honest. But the deluxe ones are really cool if you knew what you were doing. But I don't know when they'll be back in stock, if they ever will be again. Nisicat says, Josh, why not 12 volt bricks and breakouts like the G-Unique? I love 12 volt systems. They have drawbacks. G-Unique has overcome a lot of them, but there's nothing wrong with them at all. I really just use these 19 volt systems because Larry went 19 volt for really good reasons, which I won't get into right now, for his audio grade customers. And, that's just what's been available. You had before Minibox with their Pico series 12 volt systems, and that's what I was using for a long time, but they just didn't get high enough wattage. Gary's kind of fixed that. Part of it is because he just doesn't care, he just doesn't give a care, and it's hard to get certified when you're talking about increasing voltages through tiny little connectors for a 12 volt power supply. But since he's a modder, and they're modded beautifully, doesn't matter too much. Drawback of 12 volt. One of the reasons that you use higher and higher voltage for PC components, which is like why your cell phone runs at a higher voltage, like 24 volt and sometimes even 36 volt, is you need you need less thick wires. The higher the voltage, the smaller your wires can be. And it's just basically, the formula of volts times amps equals watts, right? So you're just moving that around the formula. So at 12 volt, you need extremely beefy connectors because that's going to get super, super hot and it's going to melt stuff. And this just isn't a nice form factor for power supply. For laptops and stuff like that. That's why you don't see high wattage 12 volt power bricks. it's because the manufacturers want to be able to use a tiny barrel connector, a tiny jack to plug into the side of their laptops, not some incredibly beefy, bulky, expensive connector that doesn't plug in as nicely. So that's one of the big reasons. I'm oversimplifying it, and I'm just rambling on and on. But maybe that answers your question a little bit better. Car question. My Jeep has the AMC inline 6 in it. It turns over but won't start. The plugs get power half the time. Any thoughts? Well, the big problem with a lot of the older Jeeps, of course, is the power harness has been cut up so much that you can't really tell what's going on. I recommend going to Ron Francis Wiring and buying one of their complete wiring kits. It sounds really complicated and scary. It's not. It's super easy. You do need to spend like a weekend doing it, but you can do it with just these two tools. They have amazing instructions. Every wire is labeled. It's well worth the money to have a Jeep that you know where all the wires are coming from. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would probably try is the distributor, of course. No, the inline 6 doesn't have it has a separate, golly, I'm blanking on it now. Ignition coil. It doesn't have one built into the distributor, does it? But the ignition coil is really cheap. So I would check that. It's like $7. But I'm not an expert in that area. That's just what I would try first. Okay, one more cool question. What is the current highest wattage a Skyreach can attain? There's multiple ways to answer that question. As far as parts, the fastest computer system you can build, of course, is the i9 plus 1080 Ti, which I have a video on my YouTube channel. As far as the power supply goes, you could wire up a Meanwell 1000 watt power supply. That'd probably be the simplest. They make them bigger than that, but they're big, long things. You wire it pretty much exactly like this. It's 12 volts. So there's no point in doing that, though, really, because you could cover everything you want to do with like the Eurocom 780. You could overclock an i9 and a 1080 Ti. So Tom Brown says, I have heard Seasonic power supplies are very good sounds, like a decent component. I'll end with that. My favorite power supply company is Silverstone. And Seasonic would probably be number 2. So, yeah. And the reason I like Silverstone the best, even though most all power supplies are built in one of two places, is Silverstone cares about the pinouts, and they've been really solid throughout the years in keeping the same pinouts, and they're extremely easy to depin because they use actual Molex in pieces to save money. Now, they don't save money there. So if you're trying to sleeve or mod, Silverstone makes awesome power supplies, and that to me is more important than anything else. Jonathan Doe asks a question, will be my last question. Do you like live stream more or making edited videos? I don't know. I have a lot of pride in the edited videos because they take a lot of work and I try to do a good job with them, and I feel like they're interesting. I enjoy hanging out with you. I have a fly in here. Making live stream videos, but I really can't believe that we're doing this because this is really mundane for me. So I can't believe that you're sitting here watching it. But if you guys like watching it and hanging out, awesome. But it's not really that hard to do. It just makes me take a really long time. I could have probably done this in maybe 3 minutes, but instead it took an hour and 15 minutes. But we were chilling, so. All right, so I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me. I'm sorry for not releasing a video this week. I had to do stuff for the weekend. Again, the next video is what power supply do you want to buy if you're buying a power brick? And the answer is the LA 330 PM160, but because I don't like to clickbait. But people ask me this all the time, like, what's the difference between this Dell power supply and this Dell power supply? The specs are the same. Well, the specs may be the same, but they're not built the same. So until then, I'll see you guys next time, and have a good evening. Peace.